Now, for more on developments on the continent, including the Zimbabwean election, I'm now joined by Advocate Sipho Mantula. Now, Sipho, thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps let's just quickly touch on Zim. What were your impressions?
Africa, evening Africa. I think if one looks at Zimbabwe, looking at the voter turnout, it is very promising, but this is an early stage. As we are speaking, people are looking at counting, and like I've said before, the trend of observers will just observe the counting of the presidential votes. They won't focus on the other two critical ones of local government, parliamentary, based on security issues. And I think one can say that for the first-time voters, the numbers are low. We are talking of 200,000. So one cannot say we are very excited, even with the number of only 5.5 million casting their vote, compared to the other countries that will be going to Mali, maybe. And looking even at the issues around ZEC, the issue of the voters' roll, I think this is one of the issues that have been haunting them. And I think this is one of the key documents in elections which we must always comply with. But one can say we should not be critical on the electoral management bodies because they are on a learning curve.
Well, they are learning curve. I mean, that's one of the stories that we are running regards the charges that were said to have been laid against Chamisa,
yes,
and another presidential candidate, which we know that the MDC has also opened against President Mnangagwa.
Yes.
So, but ZEC refuses to talk about that.
And I don't know why, because if one looks at the Electoral Act of Zimbabwe that was revised in 2013, yes, it is true that 24 hours before elections, no political party is allowed to campaign. And I think Chamisa, when he was saying that he will even teach them the law, I felt that he was too ambitious there. And then I think as a practicing lawyer, he should have been tactful and to can play by the rule. And I think those are the issues that even the former president coming out, it has already sparked the current president to even voice his views. And I think, like he have said today, everybody has the right to can express his or her views.
Okay. Well, I know you don't have money, but who's your money on?
Actually, it is the electoral integrity of Zimbabwe.
Okay. Let's go to Mali. So Maila Sisa and President Keita.
These are two candidates that in 2013 as well, they were contesting. Sisa, as a former prime minister, he didn't make it. And I think this time insecurity has been one of the challenges in Mali, in Bamako. But as well, what is so troubling in Mali, it is that you have this peace deal that was signed in Algiers in 2013. And you still have the issues around the remnant rebel groups. What you call the Al-Qaeda Mali branch. And which again, it still raised the issue of Sahel. You know, when Macron was here, France president, he has engaged on the issues around Sahel, insecurity. But for the elections in Mali, I think the current president, what he is going through now, it is the issues around development, youth employment, education, issues around terrorism in that area. So Mali, it is a state that even in Timbuktu yesterday, actually, it was not, one can say, peaceful, it was very volatile. And that's where the challenger of the current president was voting yesterday. And one can say that it is not promising, even if ECOWAS have already deployed almost 161 observers. The AU, it's a very low number. But at the same time, you do expect the international community to be closely monitoring Mali.
But how fair were these elections when you have, for instance, the central part of Mali where the Fulani villages are mainly dominant? The jihadists there said no vote.
You know, that takes you to Kenya again when you look at the Garissa region, Al-Shabaab, where it was active. This is the issues around extremism, religious fundamentalism, And at the same time, some of us were saying elections actually, they're the conflict trigger. Yes, it's all about representation, fighting over power, but others, they don't know the hour, you know. And there's an issue around that. It's not through the bullet, it is through the ballot. Now, that's where you find that challenges are there, that elections in Africa is not a panacea. It is not something that we should always rely on, because governance, it is still lacking. Institutions, when I was listening to Shah was talking about institutions, in Mali, you still have institutions that are religiously based.
Yes.
You still have the issues around even natural resources, scramble over them. And that's where activation of military groups is very high. The use of the child soldiers in those areas. But one can say West Africa has been going through a turmoil of change of leadership. We saw from Buhari, we saw from Ghana, we saw from Sierra Leone, and we saw from even President George Weah. So one can say it is the role of ECOWAS as well to work around these issues around governance. That governance is not only for first term or second term, but it's something that deals with development of communities.
Let's go to South Sudan. You have the 30th of July being the anniversary of John Garang.
General John Garang Dimabio is almost 13 years old. 13 years ago. They call it the flight of no return.
Yes.
He was coming from Uganda, having met with President Museveni, going to the new site, which is the Kush. The Kush site was his former military base. Actually, rumors are that Khartoum was not even aware. He was 3 weeks into power as the first vice president.
Yes, of the South, of national, but
government of national unit, yes. But he was worried because when he went to meet Museveni, the issues around the comprehensive peace agreement, hence there is a question, how comprehensive is the comprehensive peace agreement? And the issues that were raised there, he said he was forced by Americans. And we can see that this coming Sunday in Khartoum, in a private security compound, Salva Kiir, Riek Machar will have to be again finalizing the power sharing deal. And you'll remember that Riek Machar, he has fought with John Garang before.
Yes.
But John Garang, one of the visions, and even the wife that she has raised after the passing of John Garang, was not to pull the trigger to say, we might even suspect Khartoum, we might even have a likelihood of thinking Kampala might have a hand on it. But as well as looking back at their own internal Sudan People's Liberation Movement, that even within their group, nobody knew that John Garang wanted a new Sudan and not divided Sudan.
But tell me, what does this peace deal mean when you have all the smaller groups saying, we don't recognize this thing that you have signed, we believe in something else, and therefore you can go ahead and sign it on Sunday or whenever, but we are not silencing the guns?
This is the final draft, if I can be honest with you, of the peace that will be signed in Khartoum. It has been moving from Mauritania, Kenya, Addis Ababa. And it is strange that it's similar to DRC. It's 1+5. We have 5 vice presidents, reducing the cabinet from 55 to 35. They are hoping to have their referendum where they will want to reduce the states from 32 to 21.
Yeah.
And I fully agree with you that the peace agreements in Africa have to be decolonized, because the peace agreements are signed with the European pen, in the European hotel, with cameras, but there is no peace guarantors, which is communities. So I fully agree that this peace deal sometimes doesn't become realistic. There is no time frame, and there is an issue around money that has been spent, that the money that I've been spending on flying leadership from Addis Ababa to other places, sleeping in posh hotels, that is something that we have to be dealing with, this peace deal guarantors. And the question of social justice, because you can't come with peace, but if there is no social justice, communities of the southern Sudan will never, one can say, smell justice and peace.
What was this violence worth? Because when it started, Riek Machar was vice president.
Correct.
Then he goes to war.
Yes.
He comes back. The deal is you are vice president.
Again, we are saying he might not go back to that deal that he did of reneging. Remember that it was 2013,
Yes.
December,
Yes.
when they were going for the political elective conference.
Yeah, and
And Salva Kiir was worried that they are having a secret meeting for too long.
and he was attending Mandela's memorial
Correct,
service.
yeah.
And he had to go back quickly. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in Madagascar by then.
Yes.
And what happened in that meeting was that Riek Machar could not understand that the issues around leadership was that Salva Kiir was the right hand to John Garang. And at the same time, Riek Machar, as a person who was delegated to deal with the national truth and reconciliation process, wanted to purge the group of Salva Kiir. That's where things were now starting to get out of control. Okay. But even other areas, in the South Sudan, you still have occupied areas with the Nuba Mountains.
Yes.
One can say you have the Kordofan, where there is still conflict. And then you have still the rule of Khartoum, because all these conflicts, it is that there's natural resources, interest. Kenya has been quiet. Last time we spoke about Uganda's interest, so it is clear that you see that Khartoum is having the challenge of the oil price. Kenya, it is the same thing. So everybody is trying to position their own national interest, but even forgetting the character of Riek Machar, that he is still an irreducible culprit.
Okay, let's leave all that. Last week, we saw BRICS summit convening in Sandton. But the new element to this was the extension or the invitation to other African leaders. I mean, your Jamaica as well.
And then the Plus Initiative. Yes.
Exactly.
A decade of BRICS summit. Remember that we have hosted BRICS in 2013, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But this BRICS Africa outreach, one will say the countries that were called upon to be part of the meeting were very strategic. You look at Rwanda as the chair, but look at these superpowers of BRICS. China, before it can come here, it was in Rwanda.
Yes.
India was already in Kampala. Uganda, it is the chair of East Africa Community.
Yes.
You find that Togo is critical. Angola is the chair of the organ on peace security.
Yeah.
Jamaica, it is the coming chair of Caribbean organization. Turkey is the current chair of the Islamic Cooperation. Egypt is in the G77. Now, all these meetings, it is that they are trying to open this ball of BRICS to say that we want to challenge the Western North domination of America and Trump on issues of trade.
Yes.
What for me it was missing point in the BRICS summit, yes, it is almost 102 resolutions.
Yeah.
The issue is how to implement them, because I think South Africa has been doing good in terms of coming up with issues. The powerful issue that is key is around peace and security.
Yes.
Because you can't talk of trade development in Africa if you don't focus on human security, because the issue of national security we must move away from and focus on human security. The issue of youth and culture and films, I think it is very critical. The exchange programs amongst the young people, because the BRIC leaders, if you look at them, they're not young, all of them. Yeah. So you need to think of the young diplomats who will take this regional forum, because one thing about BRICS, again, it is not a formal international body, but it is a body that was formed almost 10 years ago,
yes,
when it was mooted. But our foreign policy coming from Mbeki to Zuma was that the Zuma foreign policy on BRICS was not a clear cut. There was some personal interest, which Russia was angry with the BRICS summit recently about nuclear deal.
Yes.
So one can look that from the Mandela presidency on the foreign policy on focus on human rights, rule of law, it was critical that the BRICS must be reminded of that. Mbeki's era was all about promote Africa's trade, NEPAD. But Zuma, when he came in, I think what he lost is to understand that the BRICS countries have to support even Africa, which I think he did. He was given task at NEPAD, infrastructure, But I think some of the issues in BRICS, like I'm saying, is to look back at communities, how it can benefit communities. They spoke about people to people, which one can still doubt. What is this people to people exchange? They even spoke about access to information to the young people, ICT, industrial revolution, the fourth one. When actually I will always say, if there was the fourth, where is the first, where is the second, and where is the third? And we're talking of the 17th centuries. And we're in the 21st century, which is an African century. So the fourth industrial revolution must not even undermine the forces of nature.
One of the things that I asked was, if BRICS is so efficient, why do I still need a passport or rather a visa to China?
Actually, they've given the multiple visa, and even if you go to Russia, there's no visa. I don't know whether were you aware of that. So I think in terms of movement of people, it has tried, but it is not all about traveling. But for me, it is all about dividends. Russia and China, they are sitting in the UN Security Council, and we are saying we want to reform that council, open that council so that we can have a permanent seat.
Don't go at the UN Security Council, we won't finish. I have a personal interest. Ras Sipho.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, that was Advocate Sipho Mantula, an African specialist, talking to us about various issues that are happening right here on the continent. We're taking a quick break. When we return, we'll continue with our program. Please don't go away.